What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Keep It Hoop YouTube channel. Today, I wanted to talk about the Phoenix Suns, who currently sit at 43 and 18, just a game behind the Utah Jazz for that number one spot in the Western Conference. And their team that, they've had a really good record for most of the season, but we've kind of gone, they haven't really been talked about as a title contender. And they do still have a lot of young players, and there's still a lot of question marks about how they'll perform in the playoffs. There's still teams like the Lakers in the West that are considered the favorites, and then in the East you have teams like the Brooklyn Nets, and Phoenix hasn't really gotten that respect that I'm sure they feel like they deserve. So I wanted to talk a bit about what's made them so good this year, some of the differences that Chris Paul has made, and kind of just what they do really well. So the thing that was kind of surprising is with Devin Booker, who a lot of people looked at as an ISO scorer coming into this season. Um, he has a higher percentage of his shots assisted on than I had expected. Now, I'll post a lot of these stats towards the end of the video and talk about them more in depth. But, it's been, I think, pretty impressive how he's been able to mold his game to be able to, be just as effective as he has been in the past while playing a little bit more off the ball with the addition of Chris Paul. And now another thing that's interesting with this team is they're not a super 3 point reliant team. They have a lot of guys who can make the 3 point shot. You have Devin Booker, you have Chris Paul, then you have guys like Cameron Johnson, who's a shooter, Cam Payne, Dario Saric, all these guys who can shoot, but they're actually middle of the league when it comes to 3 point attempts per game, but they do have a really high percentage. They have multiple guys who can pass the ball. Devin Booker is a solid playmaker, and then you have Chris Paul, obviously. Saric is a decent passer for his position as well. And they get a lot of good shots, and they are very high in the league when it comes to assists per game. And I think DeAndre Ayton's another guy who I think has kind of gone under the radar. He's not putting up any ridiculous stats, but he's played really well this season, especially on the defensive end, which has been surprising. Um, something they do a lot, which we see here. They like to run this really high pick and roll a lot with Chris Paul. Obviously, someone who's really good at running the pick and roll. But whether it's Ayton or a guy like Saric, or whatever big really they have on the floor, Chris Paul likes to have a high pick and roll, higher than usual. Now, what this does for an offense is it just gives you more space, right? Because instead of having the screen being set lower, which has been more traditional in the past, right? So instead of having the screen starting around here, you see Sarge starting the screen up here, right? So that leads to so much more space for Chris Paul to work with, and he's really good at occupying or operating the pick and roll, right? So it's just a lot more that the defense has to worry about because Chris Paul can, he can use a snake dribble, he can continue to drive, and then they have a really nice play here where Devin Booker is actually setting a back screen for Embiid. Or for Saric on Embiid, who is supposed to be going back to his role man, and opens a lot of things up for this team. Um, and I like Devin Booker's willingness and ability to play off the ball. We talk about a lot of these stars in today's game being very reliant on having the ball in their hands. Steph Curry, one of the best things about him is he can play off the ball, and Devin Booker has the ability to do that because of his shooting prowess. Now, he's still better with the ball in his hands, but you don't really get the full impact or effect of Chris Paul coming to your team if you're just making him play off the ball the whole time, which is, I think, what happened in Houston a bit more. And that's not to say Chris Paul didn't get enough touches or that his usage rate in Houston was low, but I think James Harden's kind of stubbornness and his propensity, he just liked to play with the ball in his hands, and I think it kept Chris Paul off the ball a bit more than you'd ideally like, right? And you see a lot of the shots they're getting, and granted, I don't think Ben Simmons played in this game against Phoenix, but still, you're still able to get a lot of good looks. They have a really solid offense. Not a lot of forced shots. Devin Booker still has a tendency to force shots at times, but I think he's gotten a lot better at shot selection. Um, and their 3-point percentage is high, one, because they have good shooters, but they do get a lot of good shots. And it's not like the Houston days where, again, which Chris Paul was on, where the team just forced 3-point shots. If it's not there, this team is more than happy to get a mid-range shot from Chris Paul or Devin Booker, two guys who are elite mid-range shooters. And you have a guy like DeAndre Ayton who can finish around the rim. And granted, again, his numbers haven't been crazy this year. And I've been really impressed with his maturity as well, because he came into the league as someone who thought, some people thought that he was going to have a little bit of an ego, but he's come in this year embracing his role as kind of the role man, really focusing on defense and rebounding. And I've been really impressed. Mikal Bridges is another player who's taken another step, and he's been really big, kind of being that third perimeter scorer, especially as a great shooter. And he also provides a lot on the defensive end as well. You also see they like to push the pace a lot. This is off of a make. They're always looking, or this one's off of a miss actually, but they're always looking ahead. Cameron Johnson's usually in the corner spotting up. It's kind of what we saw a lot with Mike D'Antoni's 7-second or less offense, where you always had a guy like Quentin Richardson or Joe Johnson spotting up on the corners. You inbound the ball or you get it off a rebound. You're always just looking up, and you have options, right? Devin Booker himself is, I think, top 10 in the league in transition points, which was actually kind of surprising because he's not someone who, you look at as a crazy athlete, but Phoenix has been better than expected, or at least I expected on defense, and they've been able to get out in transition. When you have a guy like Chris Paul who's so good at seeing the floor and just getting guys involved, your transition game, your fast break game is going to improve. But Devin Booker's been really good on that end as well. And the thing with Phoenix is you have two guys who at the end of the shot clock can get you a shot and really get their own shot. Now, a lot of the top teams have that, the Lakers, Clippers, Bucks, Nets obviously have three. So you have multiple guys on this team that can do that, which is kind of a necessity if you're going to be one of the top teams in either conferences. But, it's also kind of refreshing to see a team that's doing so well with two guys that are such high volume and high accuracy mid-range shooters. And this is something I've talked about a lot on my YouTube channel and as well as our Twitter, how a lot of people just claim that the mid-range is dead, but all the great scorers in the league are able to shoot that shot, are willing to take the mid-range and are deadly from there, right? So you have two guys on this team who love going to that shot and are very, very proficient at making that shot. Ultimately, this team and how far they get to, because obviously, with the way they've been playing this year, they're no longer just trying to make the playoffs. They are trying to win a finals, right? Trying to win a championship. That's their goal this season. I think it's ultimately going to come down to the defensive end. I think their offense is good enough for it to really translate into the playoffs. Now, guys like Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, they haven't played in the playoffs before, so it'll be interesting to see how they transition their game to the postseason. But, I'm pretty confident Devin Booker's been a guy who's usually stepped up in the few big games that the Suns have played before this season. You saw how he performed in the bubble and really took over, and we saw what he was capable of. Chris Paul, we know, despite the narratives, he's played pretty well in the playoffs. I'm not worried about Ayton because it's not like his role is crazy. Mikal Bridges, he just has to knock down shots. And I think with the way that the NBA is now, with the lack of full capacity arenas, I think it makes it a little bit easier for a younger team like Phoenix, even like a team like Atlanta or the Knicks in the East, to transition into the playoffs, because a lot of that playoff atmosphere comes from the crowds being full and, just bringing that intensity up another level. So I don't think it'll be as difficult or as different in the playoffs for these teams, but really excited for this team. I'm going to take a more detailed and a closer look at the Suns offense, and more specifically even what Chris Paul does for them. Now, right off the bat, we see the attention that Devin Booker gets, right? Everybody knows he's a great scorer and what he can do with the ball. And I think in the past, he might have actually tried to do too much, whether he would have actually driven or taken a fadeaway shot. I don't know which one he would have done, but I think he might have tried to do too much in the past because without the veterans, without the Chris Paul, when the Suns are struggling, it's really easy. It's a trap for young players to fall into where they try to do too much. Instead, he makes the really, easy and right read to Chris Paul, who's wide open, who could take this shot, right? With his ability to knock down shots, this is a shot that you live with if you're Phoenix. But he makes the extra pass to Mikal Bridges, who gets the wide open look and knocks it down. Again, he's having a really good season. And we saw even in the previous clip with the Sixers and Suns game, but you can just see the quality of looks that Phoenix gets. And sometimes, again, they still fall into the trap of forcing too many isolation shots, but it's a lot less than we've seen in the past. Devin Booker is making the right reads. He's become a bit more of a playmaker himself. And I think he's in a perfect spot now where Devin Booker's always had the ability to make plays to a degree. Now, I remember 2 years ago or so, Phoenix tried to turn him into a James Harden-like guy where he was running all the pick and rolls and he was a primary playmaker and he was averaging 4 or 5 turnovers a game. And I don't think Devin Booker's that kind of player, but I think he's very good as a secondary playmaker. And now with Chris Paul, he's able to kind of focus on his scoring and then play make when he needs to. And Chris Paul can kind of take care of the overarching facilitation of the offense. But you can see the quality of shots they get. I mean, it's open shot after open shot. This is a situation where Chris Paul really thrives. He has a big man on him, and he's one of the best, if not the best in the league at taking advantage of these mismatches, especially at the elbow in the mid-range. That's his go-to shot, and he's able to go to it time after time, and I'm sure we'll see it in the playoffs a lot. Kind of like we saw in the past clip, Dario Saric sets a high screen. Again, Chris Paul likes to have the screen set higher, right? 10, 20 years ago, we saw, screens being set here, but now with the shooting abilities of the NBA and just everybody, all these teams on offense wanting to space things out, you set the screen higher and then you have more space, right, to work with if you're the offense. So Chris Paul, again, using the high screen here, forces the switch from Harrison Barnes. And it's not awful defense, but Chris Paul is able to get in rhythm, hesitate for a bit, and rise up for the three. So again, this time, pretty high screen. And then we saw this wrinkle in the Sixers game we saw before this as well, but you have Javion Carter setting the screen for the screener. And that can cause a lot of confusion if the defense isn't on the same page and they aren't communicating, which is what happens here. And Chris Paul gets a wide open jump shot, right? Miscommunication by the Kings, and he just pulls up. That's going to be automatic. So one of the things that you can see from a really smart and good point guard is that if something is working, they know how to take advantage of it and go to it over and over, right? So again, it's going to be the Ayton high screen and roll, and Javion Carter is going to fake this time for screening the screener like he did last time. And the Kings this time try to adjust, but they end up overplaying it. So what happens is now Javion Carter gets a wide open look for himself because there's even more miscommunication this time, right? De'Aaron Fox is pointing, DeLon Wright is out of position. And you have DeAndre Ayton who's about to roll, so Hassan Whiteside can't go over. And you cause all this miscommunication from Chris Paul knowing that one, right, the high screen and roll with Javion Carter screen the screener worked, and then Javion Carter's smart enough to add a wrinkle and then just slip the screen. Chris Paul then has the vision and the wherewithal, the awareness to get it to Javion Carter, who gets a wide open shot. Mo Harkless has kind of a fake stunt contest. Javion Carter knocks it down, wide open three. Again, the looks they're getting, super nice. Now on this play, you can tell just how much respect Chris Paul's mid-range garners, right? He comes off the screen with Ayton. This time it's set a little bit lower. He goes into this footwork as if he's going to take the shot. Hassan Whiteside has to come out and contest, and then that leaves DeAndre Ayton wide open. Chris Paul with a perfectly placed pass gets the wide open alley-oop. So this is something I wanted to really key in on because this is something that James Harden wouldn't do. Now, I don't know if he just didn't want to or if the offense ran by D'Antoni didn't call for it. But when you have a guy who can deliver the pass in the shooting pocket and at the right time, I think having plays like this can make your offense so much easier and just more fluid and gets everyone involved. So Devin Booker here comes off of a down screen set by DeAndre Ayton, right? And instead of Booker getting the ball and then going all the way out to the 3-point line, dribbling for 10 seconds and then going ISO, which is something that Chris Paul, I think, had to watch Harden do a decent amount of times in Houston. Devin Booker comes off of the screen, ready to attack, and goes right into the rim. Right, nice floater. And that's, again, something James Harden didn't do a lot of, and I think James Harden 100% has the ability to, do this in game, right? He can hit the floater, he can dribble, he can catch it. He can do this in the game, right? He has the ability to do this. But Devin Booker just at least seems way more willing to play off the ball. So in the past, we've covered Chris Paul and pretty much every other guard, right? Their ability to use the snake dribble, which, again, if you guys don't remember or don't know, it's when you use the screen and then you drag the screen out, right? So in this case, it'd be going this way. Now, a lot of times it happens at the top of the key. Screen is usually set here. Ball handler is going to then come around and then go out this way. But Chris Paul has a really nice wrinkle here where even though the screen is set on the wing, still able to use the snake dribble and then create enough space to get the jump shot over Hassan Whiteside. So right here, nice snake dribble. And also, like, what this snake dribble does is even if he can't get the shot off, he is then able to buy DeAndre Ayton enough space and time where if he was able, if he wanted to be more aggressive in posting De'Aaron Fox up, it opens that up as well. But still really nice read, really nice play by Chris Paul, who's probably the best in the league at using the snake dribble. So on this play, he actually fakes the snake dribble, right? He uses the screen in and out, right? Really hard in and out there. Again, could have gone this way to snake dribble, and then DeAndre Ayton would have then ran to the rim, probably either for a post up or the Chris Paul spot up. But instead, he fakes the snake dribble, gets himself wide open for a jump shot. He realizes Mo Harkless cheats over a bit, gets Mikal Bridges a wide open shot. And I think Mikal Bridges, along with Booker and Ayton, are the is the guy who's benefited the most from Chris Paul's arrival, because the looks he gets now in this offense is ridiculous. Right, you see it right there again. Chris Paul always head up, and looking for his guys. He's able to get his shot whenever he wants, but, a true point guard, he's just always looking up. His defense is something that we don't even talk about anymore, but he's long been a really good defender as well, and that's going to help come playoff time. Again, running the pick and roll. Bad defense by Phoenix or by the Kings, but Chris Paul, again, able to take advantage of it. And then, sometimes you're not going to have to do too much because defenses are going to screw up at times, whether it's communication or effort. But you have to always have your head up and be ready to take advantage of those mistakes. Same thing here. And I think in today's game where, you're playing 82 games, obviously not this season, but in a regular season, you're playing 82 games, teams are scouting heavily and, there's a lot of isolation ball. Whenever you can get your scores, your go-to guys, easy shots, it, keeps them fresh. And also just gets them in rhythm. And I think plays like this are so important. I wish more teams had sets like this for their guys. And I think part of it is just the lost art of playing off the ball, which, again, Devin Booker has gotten better at and has improved on and is also willing to do, right? Right here, again, Chris Paul, you have the ball in your point guard's hands. Devin Booker is your scorer, starting off the ball. Nice screen set by DeAndre Ayton. Hassan Whiteside is late on that. Mo Harkless gets caught on the screen, and then Booker gets a really nice mid-range shot to go. And this play right here is just another example of the snake dribble, but this is just he's putting on a clinic on how to run the pick and roll. Again, DeAndre Ayton sets the screen. Snake dribble again, right? We talked about it, snaking around the screen. And then once he gets into this position, then now uses his body to put De'Aaron Fox in jail, is what we call it, right? So he keeps him behind. Once he comes back into the play, he's off balance. Chris Paul just rises up for a really nice 5, 6, 7 foot jump shot, and he's able to just do this consistently, which is why on top of the great passing, he's always able to get really high percentage shots for himself, and then because he's able to get shots for himself when he's running a pick and roll, it's not like a Rondo or a Rubio, who are both good passers and playmakers, but those guys aren't really looking for their own shot because they're also not known to be able to score consistently, right? But Chris Paul, if you leave him open, he's still capable of scoring 30, 40 points on any given night. So you have to play him up close. You have to keep an eye on, which makes his passing game that much more dangerous. So now let's take a look at some of their stats. The first thing that jumped off and really caught my attention was the fact that they're 16th in the league when it comes to the percentage of field goal attempts that come from 2. And then also 15th in the league when it comes to percentage of field goal attempts coming from 3. So you can tell that they have a really good balance. They don't rely too much on the 3 or the mid-range or the 2-point shot. Another thing that was interesting though, so they are middle of the pack when it comes to percentage of 2-pointers or percentage of their shots coming from 2-pointers. They are 3rd in the league in percentage of two-pointers that are mid-range shots. Not too many shots coming from long twos or in the paint. Besides Booker and Chris Paul, who can get to the paint, and Ayton, who finishes in the rim or around the rim. They don't have too many guys who are going to drive, right? Javion Carter, and guys like Cameron Payne, guys like Saric, guys like Cam Johnson are guys who are more perimeter-oriented players. So they don't get too many shots around the rim, which might hurt them during the playoffs. But, teams like the Sixers and the Clippers, even the Knicks, Nuggets, Bucks, they're all in the top 10 in mid-range shots or percentage of two-pointers coming from the mid-range. So, again, it shows you that a lot of these top teams, a lot of these top players, the mid-range is still a very crucial part of their offense. Now, a lot of these numbers are pretty positive. One thing that I am a little bit worried about, the Suns are 27th in the league when it comes to percentage of their points that come from the free throw line. Chris Paul and Devin Booker can get to the free throw line at a very high rate, but everybody else, not so much. And it's a good thing that this team doesn't rely on free throws. We've seen players like James Harden, even a guy like Embiid, Giannis, who kind of not rely on, but do get to the line a lot during the regular season, have a little bit of a drop off in free throw attempts in the playoffs because it is officiated differently. Whether people want to admit it or not, the playoffs are usually more physical and it's officiated differently. Now, again, that might change a bit with the lack of fans. That is still yet to be seen. So you can take it as a good thing, but it is still a little bit worrisome that they don't really have a lot of guys outside of Paul and Booker who can get to the line. So another part of the Chris Paul effect is the assists, right? And it's not just Chris Paul himself, because I think when you have a guy like that who's always willing to make the extra pass, always trying to find the right guy, and you're always trying to get the best shot possible, it is contagious. And the Suns are currently 12th in percentage of field goal, 2-point field goals that are assisted, and 10th in percentage of 3-point made field goals that are assisted on. So again, always being able to find the right guy, find the open guy, make the extra pass, and that's why we saw in those clips how they were able to get such open looks. Right, so you also go to the advanced statistics where Devin Booker is 9th in the league in offensive rating. You also have Chris Paul, who is 4th in the league in assist percentage, 3rd in the league in assist to turnover ratio. You also have him Chris Paul is also 5th in the league in assist ratio. Cameron Payne is actually 8th in the league in assist ratio. And you have DeAndre Ayton, who is 7th in the league in rebound percentage. DeAndre Ayton I've also been impressed with. On top of everything I've already said about him in this video, he's also top 10 in the league in 2-point shots contested, 3-point shots contested, and total shots contested. So, he's someone who came into the league as not a great defender, but he's really bought in on that side of the ball. He's by no means an elite defender yet, but he's really bought in. He's, the effort's there, and you love to see that from a young player. And last but not least, the stat I wanted to talk about the most and why I think this version of the Chris Paul-led Suns is better, or at least more compatible than the version of him on the Rockets with James Harden, comes down to something we talked about earlier, which is Devin Booker's willingness and ability to play off the ball. Now, the biggest proof of that, statistics-wise, is the fact that only 54.6% of Devin Booker's field goal makes are unassisted. Now, that seems like a high number of shots to be going unassisted, but James Harden, when he was with Chris Paul, was at 84.2. That's a 30% difference pretty much in the amount of shots that, are unassisted. James Harden, again, likes to play iso ball, get his own shot, and Devin Booker so far this season has been way more willing and just overall better at playing off the ball, whether that's catch and shoot shots, coming off screens, fast break, whatever you have. He's just been more willing to play off the ball, and I think that's allowed him to be a little bit more fresh when they need him in the fourth quarters, in overtimes, and just throughout the whole season, right? It's a long season, especially this year with the kind of weirdness that is the NBA schedule. And then it also allows Chris Paul to be at his best, where he's a point guard, a facilitator, and it's allowed him to get guys like Cameron Payne, Cameron Johnson, Mikal Bridges, Dario Saric, DeAndre Ayton, all these guys shots as well. And, they don't have to double dip. And I think they've been able to get the best out of both of these guys, and it seems like both of those players, along with the coaching staff and the general manager, the front office, getting guys like Jay Crowder as well, and just making this team. They've been able to maximize their talent. And again, there's still question marks around this team in the playoffs. Can they be, as good as they need to be defensively? Because they're going to face off against some really, really good offensive teams. I know Denver's injured, but they're still going to be hard to stop. You have teams like Portland who are, struggling, as I've talked about in the video yesterday. And then you obviously have the Clippers and the Lakers as well, who are by no means easy to stop. And then you also have the lack of their free throw shooting, which might be problematic as well. But overall, you look at these numbers, and it's been, I think a surprising season to many people. I thought that they'd make the playoffs, but I thought they'd be a little bit lower in the standings. I thought they'd be a 4th or 5th seed going into the playoffs. But regardless, very, very good season for them so far. And I think they will be an annoying team to play in the playoffs. You have a veteran like Chris Paul, guys like Jay Crowder who are going to battle. Devin Booker finally gets a shot to shine in the playoffs. That's going to be really exciting to watch. And I think this offense, just the way they run it, it's so efficient. They're explosive. They can just go on spurts. Like, I watched the Knicks Suns game last night, and there's a reason I didn't use that clip as a evidence or just a breakdown for today's video, because it's like the way that the Knicks winning streak ended, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the week. But Chris Paul, just took over in the 4th, and you have two guys in him and Booker who can get you, a shot anytime. They can both explode for 30, 40 points whenever. They've been very efficient this year. The ability to score at all 3 levels between both of those guys. It's they were down 15 at 2 separate points in the Knicks game yesterday, right? I think first and second quarter they were both down double digits, but they battled back, and especially if you have guys outside of those 2 main guys, if Cameron Payne or Cam Johnson or Mikal Bridges catch fire, it's a very scary offense to have to face in the playoffs. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, though. That'll be it for today. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, and comment. Also, follow us on our social media pages. It is Keep It Hoop blog on Twitter, and on Instagram, it is keep_it_hoop. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you guys again soon.